Well, much love to you all. So glad you're with us. Last week we kicked off a new series called In the Fire, and we came face to face with some profound truths. And the truths are He is sovereign. God is a sovereign God. We also talked about how God's calling on our lives is to remain faithful to Him even when the world around us is pushing us away from God's plan and agenda. And lastly, I want you to know that God's plan is unfolding through history. Not just in Daniel's time, but it's unfolding through our time. It's going to continue to unfold through to the end of the age. That's what the Bible tells us. So again, with that in mind, I want to continue in our study in the book of Daniel, and we're still in chapter 1. And we'll begin in verse 8, the verse we focused on last week, and we'll continue reading through verse 20. And these verses show us Daniel's resolve, the test he proposed, and how God honored his faithfulness. And it is one continuous story, and I want all of us to hear it together. Daniel 1. And we're going to read verses 8 through 20. It reads like this. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, and Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these four young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. And at the end of the time set by the king to bring them into service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king requested them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. Last week we talked about the word resolve. The word resolve means he purposed in his heart. It means that he thought about in advance what he's going to do. He fixed his will. He drew a line. And I love that. I love that Daniel resolved in his heart that he was going to stand for God. In Daniel, we find a picture of a young man who remained faithful and committed to his God despite what was happening all around him. The systems of Babylon, the people of Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon was completely against what he was used to in Judah. It went against God's plan and purposes. And Daniel saw that, but he remained consistent. He remained faithful and committed to his God. Why? Because he had a resolve. And that didn't happen when he was brought to Babylon. That happened when he gave his life to his God. We all need that resolve, don't we? We all need that resolve to stand up for truth, to stand up for Christ. At our workplaces, in schools, everywhere in the marketplace, wherever God puts us, we need a resolve like Daniel to stand up for what's right and for what's true, holy and just. When the pressure comes, when culture presses in, when the opportunities come, when you want to compromise, that's when our faith is revealed. That's when it becomes clear what we really believe. Now, it's important to notice what Daniel did not do. He did not ask the chief, he did not ask his king to be removed from Babylon. He didn't protest. No, he didn't do any of that. He knew that wasn't an option. Instead, he chose to remain faithful in Babylon. Daniel resolved to remain faithful and committed and consistent in Babylon, right where God placed him. And that's a word for some of us today. Most of the time, God doesn't pull us out of Babylon. He keeps us there. And sometimes we don't have an option to remove ourselves from Babylon. We're stuck there. But the question this morning is, do you have the resolve to remain faithful in your Babylon? Maybe that's at work, where you're put in situations and you have to compromise your integrity. You have to stand for what's right. Maybe it's in a school setting. When every time you stand for your faith, you feel isolated. Or maybe your Babylon is what we are all experiencing today. The culture wars, the political wars that we're in. And sometimes we want to get out. Sometimes we wish we weren't experiencing any of this. But God doesn't remove us. But what God calls us to is faithfulness to your Babylon. Maybe it's a strained relationship. You hope for something better, something that gave you peace, where you experienced love, but that's not what you got, and you're stuck. That is your Babylon. You see, we all have these moments, these opportunities, our own version of Babylon in our lives. And what God is calling us to is to have a resolve like Daniel to remain faithful where He has placed us. Think about Daniel. Some scholars say he was maybe 15 or 16, that young, taken from his home. From a human perspective, there is no future for him. No future. And when you think about young people of our day, that young, to compromise your faith, to compromise what you believe in, it just takes one conversation, one TikTok video, one television program, one documentary. It takes just one thing to shift their minds, their perspective on things. Think about Daniel, who is maybe 15 or 16, and he is in this mess, taken away from his loved ones, taken away from his land, and brought into Babylon. But I thank God for his resolve. You see, Daniel really believed. I want you to hear me. Daniel really believed that despite what was happening to him, God was still in control of his circumstances. I want you to know that no matter what is happening in America today, God is still sovereign and He's still in control, not just America, but of this world, of this universe. He's in control. He's always in control. He never loses control, and He's always on time. And that's why it's so important that you keep these themes in mind as we continue in our study of Daniel. God is sovereign. Number two, God is calling us to be faithful in a hostile world, and God's redemptive plan continues to unfold. Not just in Daniel's time, but in our time, and it will until the end of the age. So keep that in mind. But the Bible talks about how the king's official was terrified by what Daniel asked of him. He knew his life was on the line. His assignment was clear: to carry out his king's duties, to groom these men, give them the best education, best food, transform them, and get them ready for king's purposes. He was going to assign them. But what did Daniel say? What did he resolve? What did he resolve to? To not do what? Not to defile himself. And some of us, I believe in all of our lives, there are things that we can identify as things that we can say no to. Things that we watch, things that we engage in, conflicts, whatever it might be. There are things, opportunities in all of our lives that we can look at and go, I need to draw the line and say no to that because that is not from God. And that no for Daniel was king's food. Who knew that the first vegan diet challenge was in the Bible? Daniel says no to his king's food. And what did that represent? You might look at that and go, what's the big deal? All of the best food and wine, what is the big deal? You see, the problem with his food was Nebuchadnezzar was seducing them for their loyalty. You think food is great, but he was seducing them. Food and drink in exchange for their faith, their identity. You see what the enemy does? The indoctrination that takes place in our nation, in our schools, everywhere. The political wars causes us to think it's between the left and the right. It's between what he said, she said. It's between what I believe in, what I don't believe in. But behind all that, there is the enemy who's trying to indoctrinate you, who's trying to take you, remove you from the plan and purposes of God. And we, the church, out of all people, we, the church, need to recognize what's happening. And say no, and have the boldness and the guts to say no to those things that are there. But here's the good news for Daniel. The Lord's favor was upon Daniel. Notice verse 9 says, now God brought Daniel into favor. Yeah, that's one of the translations. God brought Daniel into favor. God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. It doesn't say Daniel manipulated his way into favor. He didn't try to come up with things so he could find favor. He didn't fear his way into favor. It was God who brought him into favor. How many of us want that? All of us. We cannot earn God's favor. God has to grant us favor. It is a gift. It is a blessing. You can't work yourself. You can't work hard. I go to church every Sunday. I read my Bible. I pray 3 times a day. That is not going to earn you God's favor. He's sovereign. He does what he pleases. We cannot question. All he requires from us is faithfulness. That's all he wants to see. But here's the problem. Obedience always comes with a test. Every single time. Again, think about the opportunities in your life, the things that you can say no to. It's not as easy as a simple no. You will be tested. Because obedience to God always comes with a test. For Daniel, the test came in something that looked so small. Food. For you, it might be something else. Again, you see the king's delicacies weren't just about eating well. It wasn't about simply the best of the best. It was about loyalty. It was about the king trying to seduce these young men to give up what they had in exchange for the Babylonian gods. That's why he changed their names. That is why their names were changed. The name Daniel meant God is my judge. Hananiah meant the Lord is gracious. Mishael, who is like God. Azariah, the Lord is my helper. Rooted in the character of God. But Babylon stripped them away and replaced them with the names of pagan gods. Belteshazzar. Bel, protect his wife. Who's Bel? Babylon, the chief Babylonian god. Shadrach, which means commander of Aku. Aku was, again, a Babylonian moon god. Meshach, likely who is what Aku is. Again, tied to the moon god. Abednego, servant of Nebo. Nebo was the Babylonian god of wisdom and writing. In other words, in exchange for food, forget who you are. Forget your God and embrace what I have to offer. But Daniel resolved that he was not going to defile himself, so he made a peaceful request. He didn't stage a protest. He said, test us. Give us what? Vegetables and water. And test us for 10 days. And sure enough, at the end of 10 days, they looked healthier and stronger. Talk about a miracle. In 10 days, these guys were better in every area. Like they looked better, they sounded better, they're healthier, stronger in every area. They were just 10 times better than everyone else. The point isn't diet. The point is faith. Your faith in God. Your faith in God. And this is confidence. This is trust in God. Daniel believed that obedience to God would open doors. He believed it. He knew that. And again, in just 10 days, an unbelievably short time, God worked a miracle. And Daniel's story shows us that when obedience costs something and we still trust God, He grants favor. I want you to know that every single person in this room, if you've given your life to Christ, if you are a Christian, your faith is on trial always. Always. Every day, you're put in situations and moments where your faith is on trial. It could be on I-95 when you're stuck behind a poor old lady who's driving slow, but you don't see her. And you don't realize that she can't drive like you. Our faith is on trial every single day. But obedience costs us something. It will cost you something. But will you remain faithful? Because if you do, God will grant favor. God will grant favor. I think about the pattern throughout Scripture. Noah, what did he do? He built an ark. Everyone around him ridiculed him. What are you doing? Noah, are you nuts? Like, what are you doing? Trying to build this thing. I've never seen anything like this. We have never seen anything like. What are you thinking? Obedience. It cost him something. But because of his obedience, God preserved him and his family. Abraham was told, go to a place unfamiliar to you. Leave everyone behind. Go to a place, you and your family, take them and go to a far land that I'm going to show you. People around him were probably saying the same thing. Why are you moving now? Maybe it cost him his reputation, but he did. And that opened God's favor and blessing for him to become the father of what? All nations. Esther, who went before the great king, she could have lost her life, but because of her people were saved. So we see the same pattern. Joseph, even Mary, she trusted the angel's word. I mean, talk about bringing shame and being ridiculed and mocked for being pregnant or not married to Joseph. But she trusted the angel's word. And because of her obedience, she carried the Savior of the world. So obedience will cost something. But if you continue to trust God, it is God who grants favor. It is Him who grants favor. Here's the truth, or other side of obedience. God gives us wisdom to navigate, strength to endure, and favor that no man can manufacture. Wisdom, strength, and favor. I'm trying to zip through my message because we don't have a lot of time. But Daniel and his friends didn't just survive in Babylon, they thrived in it because God brought them into favor. I love that. Look at what happens. God gave them knowledge and skill, every gift, every talent, everything that you and I have. I want you to recognize first and foremost that it is from God. Your ability to work, earn a living, provide for your family, your skill, whatever that might be, recognize that it is from God. But then, God also has special assignments for each one of us. And for those assignments, He gifts us special gifts and blessings. He gives wisdom to navigate, strength to endure, and favor that none of us can manufacture. Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. God gave Daniel a unique spiritual gift for interpreting dreams and visions. Why? Because God had a purpose for Daniel's life. That was the favor of God that he received the gift to be able to interpret those things. And when the time came, he was able to do it. When God calls, He equips. When God calls, He equips. I want to make it very clear. God has already blessed each and every one of us with natural giftings, abilities, and talents, whether it be playing an instrument, singing, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Those are great. But then if He has called you, and if you remain faithful, He will equip you for your assignment. If you're not faithful, there's nothing to equip you with. For what? You're not ready for the assignment. The king interviewed them. Imagine the scene. This is the most important interview of Daniel's life. The scripture doesn't tell us, but I can only imagine the competition. Talk about, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of other young men who were brought from Judah, who were trained, who were put in the same program. All of them in the same program. And here they are. On this one bright day in the king's court. It's exam time. It is interview time. And here's Daniel among his friends and all the other people. Fierce competition. The pressure, the intensity of standing before the most powerful man in the world. But Nebuchadnezzar found them 10 times better. Not once, not just in one area, across the board they were better. They hadn't done anything special except remain faithful. If you remain faithful, God will take care of the rest. That's my point. And what does faithfulness look like? What do you think faithfulness looks like? Obedience to His word. You're going to get tested, but if you remain committed and consistent, He will grant the favor. He will give you everything you need to succeed. That is Daniel's story.